Welcome everybody. This presentation, this wonderful webinar is going to be hosted by our one and only Diane Richardson, one of the trio, like the chocolate, but more tasty and better for you. And that joke sounded even better the second time around. I don't really want to say much about Diane because once I start, I'm going to go on for ages, aren't I? With all her accolades. She's just brilliant. And it is interesting to see that many of her what should we say? Many of her team from last year's Division D are popping their little faces up to say hello today.
Of course, we're never far away.
And now, elevated as she is to the trio, she has well, I really don't know how to explain this title, let alone the subject, but I know it's going to be very interesting and great fun. So I'm going to do the best thing I can do. I can see that red light in the back of my face, and I will stop and hand the stage over to Diane Richardson.
Thank you, John. I'm not sure I can live up to that introduction. I'm really not sure I can. Do we really belong on working groups? Tonight we're going to examine that and whether and how we work and whether or not they work in groups. Many of you will have heard of Tuckman's model, which is a recursive model and assumes a straight line progression through various stages towards maximum efficiency that it then maintains until the group dissolves. Tuckman came up with this model in 1965, and it describes the stages of group development. And if you've done organizational design courses anywhere, you will be familiar with this model because it's a standard that's taught everywhere. The forming, storming, norming, and performing. Even if you haven't heard of Tuckman's model, you've probably heard people talk about how a group forms, it then storms, it then norms and works out who's doing what before it actually starts performing. And then later on, with Jensen, Tuckman added adjourning, which is that kind of phase that we all have when you leave a team and you think, yeah, well, what's next? We've all been there. And many of us have been in groups where we've had debates over who's doing what and how we're going to be doing it and what the standards are and why we're doing it before we actually sit down to starting to do the work. And Tuckman's model focuses on the group's performance and activity as it moves, as I said earlier, to peak effectiveness until it dissolves. However, we all, and I mean all, actually spend time structuring and how we respond to people and when we're alone. Byrne, a Canadian psychologist who became a naturalized American, practicing from the 1940s to 1970s, devised 7 recognizable ways in which we have to spend structuring our time. Unlike Tuckman's model, Byrne's model and concepts of time structure gives us a way of tracking progress within a group, which is why it is so important and powerful. And we all have these needs. They are universal, regardless of culture, regardless of gender, regardless of anything. We all do it. We might want to spend time alone. And this alone time can be spent planning, reflecting, driving a car towards an appointment, sitting at your desk, just thinking about what you're going to do next. Just sitting and chilling out in front of the TV. It can be all of those things, or reading a book like this gentleman here is. And then there are rituals that we also go through. And the rituals can easily be described as the way we like our tea. Some people say it's got to be milk into the cup and then the tea poured on top. Other people say it must only be loose tea. Other people don't mind tea bags. Other people say you've got to warm the pot before and then throw that water out before you put the tea in and then put boiling water on top of the tea. Other people will only use a specific cup or type of cup to drink tea, be it bone china or a mug, or they only will even, in extreme cases, perhaps only ever drink tea out of one particular cup. But we all do it. We do it also when we meet people. Most of us know one or two others on this call this evening, if not a few more. So we all say hello and how are you? And we all agree that yes, we can have a nice kind of conversation. How are you? How's it going? That sort of thing. Where are you? Being British, we often ask people, what's the weather like where you are? Or many of us being Brits, let's put it that way. If you're a Brit, you say that. Some of these rituals and cultures in different cultures or different countries can seem very strange because they're not our rituals. Some people might bow, other people might handshake pre-COVID. Others might kiss each other on the cheek. But all of these are rituals that are natural to the people who are performing them. And they're all rituals that they understand. We perform rituals when we meet, as I said, friends, as we talked about just a moment ago. But also when we meet strangers or new business contacts, we behave slightly different because the expectations are different. As Toastmasters, for example, we shake hands at the start. Shake hands at the start every time we release the stage to a new speaker. We applaud every time someone takes to the stage or leaves the stage, having done an evaluation or a speech or a Times report. Most of us know that there's always going to be feedback, and we give the feedback in terms of slips or in terms of evaluations, but we constantly do it. And we're also conscious of how long we speak for, because it's drummed into us. We're taught and learn how to watch the timing clock to the point where it becomes second nature to us, and we don't have to do it. The third way that we spend time together is we pass time. We literally pass the time with others. In other words, small talk. We pass time whenever we chat socially. We'll talk about the weather, our holidays, our shops, or what we watched on TV last night. We pay just sufficient attention to be able to hold our conversation and pay attention to it, be able to add our own views or information once the subject has been mentioned. Our conversations are generally quite ritualized. We often obey some intuitive rule about not changing the subject until we judge that others are willing to do so. We've all been in situations where we think, oh yeah, I've got something to say here, but it's on a different subject, and we've all hesitated as we think about, well, actually, is now the time to do it? Or is it just that we're just thinking about it at the start of the group gathering? The fourth one is working. And here we perform tasks with others to meet targets and to produce goals. As we do when we write a club success plan, or work towards becoming a distinguished club, for example, or the help we get to along the way to become a DTM if someone's helping you with an HPL project or is on your HPL committee. That is all examples of us working. We also work with family and friends to complete decorating a room in a house. Again, it's the common goal that brings us together and drives us forward. And then if we really like people, we start to play. And this is when we start to enjoy spending time with other people because we enjoy the company. We enjoy their company. A great Toastmaster club is playing because it's a hobby. We're engaged in a common hobby. Or it could be you're engaged in a sport. Less obvious examples are when you're working, about when you're brainstorming and setting out where you're going to go with an idea and how you're going to solve a problem, for example, before you start deciding whether or not some of those ideas are any good. Playing together can create especially strong bonds together, which are more resilient. And that's because teams that laugh together, enjoy each other's company, tend to be more resilient than groups of individuals. And it affects us all. And all of this is happening out of our awareness. Sometimes we play psychological games. I don't know if any of you play poker, but poker in a way is a game of bluff. It's a way excuse me, of making people think you have something you don't have. But the psychological games are often repetitive sequences of interactions between two people, or sometimes more. There are ways in which we fail to get along with people. These games are often played, like the earliest groups we talked about, out of our awareness. But sometimes we can get this feeling of, as something starts, as if we have a special antennae, that people are starting to play a psychological game with us and responding to our own game. We move through the rituals, we do the pastiming, we do the playing, we do the working. But throughout the time, we seem to register very subtle signals, just as a poker player reads subtle signals from the person opposite or the people who are playing with them to work out whether or not they really do hold 4 aces or if they're bluffing. And sometimes this means that people want to always get one over on you, or always want to be behind you. And these are the kind of people who will play this game. They don't know they're playing it, and you don't know you're playing it, because it all happens out of psychological awareness. After we get to know people, and hopefully without any psychological games, we can relax and enjoy ourselves and be in their company. Often we believe that this is not possible, so we maintain a facade, a shutter, behind which we hide our strongest emotions or censor our opinions. We've all been there and thought, oh, I'd better not say that. And then you think, oh, actually I can because I'm safe. Or you might think, oh, I'm not going to say that, and don't bother. Because this kind of closeness and intimacy only occurs when we're able to share our views and true feelings candidly. I'm sure we've all been in Toastmasters meetings or committees where we've thought that something that has been said is not appropriate. We don't always challenge people at the time. Sometimes we just think, yeah, we'll let it go. And other times you'll get challenged. And when you get challenged, or when you feel comfortable challenging people, that's when you really are motoring along as a team. You've got closeness, you've got cohesion, you've got unity. You're all driving towards a common purpose. Sometimes, though, we can also fall into rackets. Any one of the 7 stages I've described, which is a repetitive, unsatisfactory sequence that leaves us feeling bad. We've all been there. We've all been in meetings where we just think, oh God, not again, or what just happened there? Why is it that everything was set up and it didn't work? So to describe and to map how these stages will work, Eric Byrne came up with something called group imagoes. And it's a transactional analysis concept that has direct relevance into the ways in which we join and cooperate in teams, just as the way we do pastimes, the way we do the rituals, the way we work together, the way we play together, the way we get close or not close with each other. All of these stages and the alone stage can be mapped in a group imago. And it is an imago that was described by Eric Byrne as a mental image that we have of a group of people. So it could be your Toastmasters club. It could be a group of people outside of your consciousness and awareness, conscious awareness, who influence your actions. Thus, before we enter a room to join a group, they've already had in their minds an imago of them. So this is likely to be based on both a mixture of historical events, rumor, preconceptions, and fantasy. The imago will be personal to each and every one of us, because we all have different expectations when we enter a room, which will in turn lead to different perceptions of how a room is going to react. So in summary, a group imago has direct relevance into the ways in which we go and join and cooperate in teams. We've all been in teams where we don't want to be, and we're perhaps fearful of them. Or we join other teams that we really want to enjoy being part of. And we need to focus on the individual within the group and their perception of the group. So it's not how I feel and see the group, it's how you see and feel the group. As I said, Byrne described it as a term to mean a mental image of a group of people. It's outside of our awareness, but it does influence our actions and how we behave with others. It's based on a mixture of past events, preconceptions, rumors, and fantasy. It's personal to each of us, and we will all have different expectations and perceptions, as I said. And it's important that you remember these, please, when you're drawing your imagos, because I'm not going to ask you to share them. They're private to you. But it might help you identify why you get along with people and why you don't get along with some others, based on the 7 principles of time structuring, types of time structuring that we've looked at earlier. And the other thing is, unlike the Tuckman model, where everything is assumed to be in a straight line, the group imagoes that we draw and our perceptions change. We can keep updating our imagos, which is why I think it's a great model to think about when you're thinking of your TA club. Your Toastmasters club. Because we never know who's going to be there. There are always people joining. A few, unfortunately, leave. But it's a constant change within a group. And your relationships will change over time. So there are 4 basic imagos. There's the anticipatory group imago. We begin with anticipating a mental image. Like the one that I'm going to show you soon. Typically, this will contain a little more than a slot for ourselves, a slot on a higher level for the leader, perhaps, or the person who you know has introduced you to your Toastmaster group, and an undifferentiated slot for everyone else in the room. If you already know some of the people, group members, then they might have the slot of their own within their mental picture. The next one is our adjusted group imago. As we get to know other members in the group, we update, we augment, we supplement, and adjust our own imago and perceptions of how the group will work. Gradually, we begin to differentiate between the individuals, not just male, female, but along the lines of creative, talkative, quiet, becoming friendly, seems a bit offish. And all of these perceptions are based on how we interacted in our 7 stages at the start, how we passed time with people, how we did the rituals. Did they perform the same rituals that you were expecting? Because if they didn't, the chances are that you will put them further away on your imago. Adapted group imagos. Now, these are where our relationships and how they work with the leader of the group. And we need to work this out in our own minds before we decide how we can behave towards other members of the group. We begin to adapt our imago to reflect on how we intend to, or not, adapt to the leader and the other group members and their behaviors and patterns. This is similar to being a child in the family. We need to know where we stand with our parents or stood with our parents in order to deal with our siblings. So those of you who had brothers and sisters, you notice that things change out of awareness, even if you're only 1 or 2 years older than your sibling. Deep down, you will register that no longer are you having everything to you in terms of attention. It's being shared now with somebody else. So the position that we put the slots, our slot, vis-a-vis the leader's slot, will take on more significance. And the final imago is the attached or alienated group imago. We enter this stage with a clear view of the individual members of the group. So we know who everyone is, or know who most of the people are, depending on the size of the group. There will be enough detail in this imago, this group imago, for us to have decided which people we want to work closely with and who we prefer to lose from our team or the club or from our subgroup within the club or group. As I said, this model can be applied to Toastmaster clubs, it can be applied to your bridge club, it can be applied to your chess club or any other club that you belong to. And it can also be applied in the workplace and the teams that you work in. And we've worked out by now who will tolerate, providing we don't have to spend too much time with them, who we won't tolerate at all, and who we want to spend time with. However, you're not the sole decision maker. Everyone else in the room will have made the same decisions. They'll also decide about leadership issues and have they determined if they're going to want to be a leader or if there's going to be a struggle for control. Each of these is up to each individual's own determination. So this is what an anticipatory group imago might look like. So the outer boundary containing the light blue area is the group. There's me in the yellow. If you've been if this was a Toastmaster club, you might think of the leader as being the person who introduced you to the club or the person you've spoken to on the phone or had email correspondence with. And you will be aware there's a whole lot of other participants turning up. So my first anticipatory imago for a meeting I went to a couple of years ago, and I've deliberately not changed it because it illustrates the point quite well, was the Area 21 training I gave. So I knew there would be me there. I anticipated that Nikita, who was the division director at the time, would be there, that Tom would be there, who was also the area director for that area. I knew that Helen Pettifer from Aylesbury and Marcus would be there because they told me. I thought that Chris might be there. And I then knew that there would be club officers from other clubs in the area. So FM Global, Maidenhead, Wokingham, Ascot, as they were then, Windsor, Byrne. And there might well be other club officers there who I didn't know about. And there would be other presenters, but I had no idea who these presenters were going to be. But I knew who the people who closest to me were. And as you can see here, the three closest to me are Nikita, Helen, and Marcus. And that's because I knew them all well. So that's why I've drawn them close to me. When I turned up, I found that there were actually two more people there who I get on and know very well. So again, for clarity, I've marked them in a different color. So I'd heard that they were coming. So I adapted my imago. And then when I arrived, I discovered that many of the people who I thought were going to be there and had said to me they were going to be there weren't there. So my imago changed. I could see that there were male and female participants. I could see that there were other presenters there. And I could see that there were about 4 people in the room who I knew. And only 4 people. But I did begin to adjust my imago, to make it more real and to identify people. So in the adapted imago that I drew for this meeting, I thought, okay, there will be some sort of leader running the event. I knew who else was going to be there, because this is an adapted imago for children's speakers at the time. And I knew that there was going to be somebody there doing the leader, and I knew who the Toastmaster for the evening was. And I placed people here in their closeness to me at the time. But each time I've drawn this adapted group imago, it changes as my relationship changes. So Nikita moved away and left the club. So, and Adrian and I then worked very closely together for a long, long time, and still are. So now if I was to draw this, Adrian would be very close onto this group, and Nikita wouldn't be there, because she's not part of that group that I expect to see and find. Jackie would have moved much closer and Root further away, because again, I don't see Root that often now, but I see Jackie a lot more frequently. And that is how we keep adapting this for every meeting we go to, and how we adapt it even during the meetings. And over a course of time, it's very interesting to map out your imagos from when you first went to where you are now. So if you just think about your adaptive group imago from the very first time you went to Toastmasters, and if you were to draw it out, what would you draw? John, can you switch chat on, please?
Chat is enabled.
Thank you. So don't put names in, but just think how different it is now to then. I would imagine you have many more different slots for each of these people, for the members of your clubs. And your relationship and distance to these people has moved over time. And every time you form a new group, that imago will change. It changes every time a new member joins a club or an existing member leaves. So someone has, Jose said the first imago was me, the president that invited me, and the person from the email link, and Toastmaster members. And Jose, I think yours is not unique. I think most of us think of Toastmasters like that before we go into the first meeting. Jose then goes on to say, it is now completely different. I'm sure it is. You've probably got slots for each and every member in your club. But what is significant, as I said here earlier, is your closeness to the leader. Because this determines where power struggles, or helps you to determine where power struggle might come from. Now, this is mine. Another person who's listed and shown on this adaptive group imago will have a completely different imago. It would be nice to think that Terry had me quite close to him, or Nikita had me quite close to her. But I can't guarantee it. So the attached group imago. This is where we enter a clearer view of individual members and of the group. There'll be enough detail that we have about all of the people in the group. And we'll have worked out who we want to work with and who we would prefer to lose from the team, and who we tolerate, providing we don't have to spend enough time with them. As I said earlier, they will, of course, make the same decisions about us. We also have to decide the leadership issues and the levels of determination as we continue to struggle. It could be that actually you think there is a clique formed, and that some people aren't, although they're members, actually aren't in the group, aren't in the team. They've become detached. So if you're drawing this for a hybrid meeting, just think about your interaction if you're online with those actually in the meeting, or if you're in the meeting with those online. Does it feel like two different meetings, or is it one meeting where everyone fits in and works together as one team? Are there people clearly on the way out from the group who are about to leave? And if so, what can you do to bring them back into the fold? Sometimes all people want is a phone call to remind them that the next meeting is this Wednesday. And it's enough to bring them back. Other people might need to be told, come back, you know, what we've noticed you haven't been here for a few weeks. Is there anything wrong? But it starts to bring them back towards the group, so they're more likely to still stay members. And ultimately, you want them back in that circle so they contribute to the group. And as I said, we draw these imagos all the time in our minds. But occasionally it's worth just sitting down and drawing out your imago, so you work out where you are in the group and how that works for you or doesn't work for you. And if it doesn't work for you, how can you make it work for you? What are the 7 ways of spending time do you need to do more of, or adapt, or spend less of time doing? Because the way we do it will affect the way that we develop as a club, as a Toastmasters club, as a team at work. It's all down to our perceptions, and it all happens out of awareness